My name is Elena Brooks. I am 29 years old, and 5 days before my wedding I found out my mother secretly took $50,000 from another family to stop me from marrying the man I loved. She never told me. She never told my father either. She planned everything behind my back. She even invited another man to sit near the front row during my wedding ceremony, and on the wedding day, my best friend whispered 3 terrifying words to me: "Don't walk out." When I looked outside the bridal room door, my whole family was standing near the altar with microphones, cameras, and papers in their hands. They were ready to destroy me in front of everyone, but they didn't know one thing: I was already prepared. I grew up in a quiet town outside Denver, Colorado. My father, Michael Brooks, worked as a delivery driver for over 30 years. My mother, Sandra Brooks, worked at a medical clinic. My younger sister, Alyssa, was always treated like the princess of the family. I was the responsible daughter, the one who cleaned, cooked, and sacrificed everything. At 15, I was already helping with bills. At 17, I worked part-time after school. At 21, I paid my own college fees while my parents paid for Alyssa's vacations and shopping. My mother always used one sentence against me: "You're the older daughter, you should understand." And every time she said it, I stayed quiet. I studied law administration at college and later started working as a legal assistant at a family law office in downtown Denver. I built my own life alone. I bought my own condo. I never asked my parents for money, but somehow I was always the one expected to give more. My mother controlled everyone. She controlled conversations, money, and decisions. If anyone disagreed with her, she guilt-tripped them until they gave up. My father rarely spoke. He always said, "Listen to your mother." Then he stayed silent. My sister Alyssa was 24. She wanted attention all the time. She made beauty videos online and spent most of her day taking selfies. My mother paid her rent, bought her a car, and defended her no matter what she did. But me, everything came with conditions. Then I met Ethan Carter. He changed my life. Ethan was a civil engineer from Seattle. He was calm, respectful, and kind. We met during a charity fundraiser. When he talked to me, he actually listened. He cared about my opinions, my dreams, and my feelings. Not once did he treat me like a burden. When I introduced him to my family during Thanksgiving, my mother smiled politely but her eyes looked cold. She said, "He seems all right." That was all. Later that night, she pulled me aside and whispered, "You could do better." My sister laughed and said, "He's not the type I imagined for you." My father stayed silent watching football. Ethan never complained. He respected my family even when they disrespected him. For 4 years he stayed patient, but my mother never accepted him. She called him your friend instead of my boyfriend. She ignored his birthday calls. She invited another man named Brandon Walker to family events hoping I would leave Ethan. Brandon came from a wealthy family and my mother loved that. She thought money mattered more than love. When Ethan proposed to me beside a lake in Oregon, I cried with happiness, but when I told my mother, she stayed silent for 3 seconds before saying, "I hope you know what you're doing." No excitement. No congratulations. My sister complained that I was getting married before her, and still I ignored all the warning signs. 3 weeks after the engagement, my mother suddenly offered me $25,000 for the wedding. I was shocked. She had never offered me help before. I thought maybe she was finally changing. Ethan warned me softly, "Be careful. Elena, your mom never gives without expecting something back." But I wanted peace. I wanted a normal family. So I accepted the help. Big mistake. My mother quickly took control of the wedding. She added strangers to the guest list. She changed seating arrangements. She insisted Brandon Walker should sit close to the front because his family is important. I argued a little, but eventually I gave up because wedding planning was exhausting. Then 5 days before the wedding, my best friend Rachel showed up at my apartment late at night. She looked terrified. She handed me her phone. There were screenshots, messages between my mother and Brandon's mother, Karen Walker. One message said, "Everything is ready for Saturday. Once the intervention happens, Elena will change her mind. The $50,000 was worth it." I felt sick. My hands started shaking. Rachel showed me more screenshots, bank transfers from Karen Walker to my mother, $30,000. First, then $20,000 later, both labeled wedding arrangement. My own mother accepted $50,000 to stop my marriage and push me toward another man. I couldn't breathe. I sat on the kitchen floor crying while Rachel held my shoulders. Then I called Ethan. He came immediately. I told him everything. He read every screenshot quietly. Then he looked at me and said, "We are not canceling this wedding. They don't get to ruin our future." That night, we made a plan. We gathered evidence, bank records, messages, guest lists, everything. I organized the papers carefully like legal case files. Rachel kept all the documents safe. The next few days were torture. My mother called me constantly pretending everything was normal. She talked about flowers, cake, and decorations while secretly planning to humiliate me in front of 200 guests. At the rehearsal dinner, my mother kept introducing Brandon Walker to guests like he was already part of the family. Ethan stayed calm the entire night, but I could see the pain in his eyes. The wedding morning finally arrived. The venue was a beautiful garden outside Phoenix, Arizona. White flowers covered the aisle. The weather was warm and bright. Rachel stayed beside me in the bridal suite. She carried the envelope full of evidence. My mother entered smiling. She hugged me tightly and handed me a letter. She said, "Read this later, honey." I looked at her smile and realized she truly believed she was doing the right thing. At 10:30 the ceremony music started. I walked outside in my white dress. Ethan stood waiting for me at the altar, smiling softly. Then I noticed something strange. My father stood holding a microphone. My mother stood beside him. My sister was recording everything on her phone, red recording light glowing. I kept walking. When I reached the altar, my mother suddenly interrupted the ceremony. She took the microphone and announced, "Before this wedding continues, everyone deserves to know the truth." The entire garden became silent. My mother claimed Ethan was financially unstable. She accused him of hiding debt. She said he couldn't provide the future I deserved. Then she pointed directly toward the third row. "Brandon Walker is here. He truly loves Elena, and we can still fix this before it's too late." Everyone turned toward Brandon. He looked uncomfortable and embarrassed, but my mother continued. She wanted me to break down. She wanted me to cancel the wedding publicly. Instead, I reached for the envelope in Rachel's hand. Part 2. I took the microphone from my father slowly. My hands were steady. Ethan squeezed my hand softly beside me. I looked directly at the crowd and said, "Since my mother wants honesty today, let's be honest." The garden became completely silent. I opened the envelope and held up the papers. My mother accepted $50,000 from Brandon Walker's family to stop this wedding. Gasps spread across the crowd. My mother's face instantly changed. She looked terrified for the first time. I showed the screenshots. I showed the bank transfers. I showed the messages where my mother planned the entire public humiliation. My sister's hands started shaking while recording. Everyone could see the truth now. I looked at Brandon. "Did you know about this?" Brandon stood slowly. He looked ashamed. He said quietly, "Not everything. My mother told me Elena would eventually choose me. I didn't know about the wedding plan." Then he walked out of the ceremony without another word. His mother stayed frozen in her chair. My mother started crying loudly. She shouted, "I did this because I love you. I was trying to protect you." But her performance no longer worked. People were whispering everywhere. Some looked angry, some looked shocked. My father looked completely broken. He stared at my mother and asked, "You took money to control our daughter's life?" She couldn't answer. He looked at the speech in his hands and realized he had been manipulated too. For the first time in my life, my father stood against her. He dropped the speech and walked away silently. Then I looked at my mother and said, "You tried to sell my future because you cared more about status and money than my happiness." She cried harder, but nobody defended her anymore. The truth was too clear. Then I turned toward Ethan. I looked into his eyes and realized something important. Real love stays calm even during chaos. Real love protects. Real love never humiliates you. We continued the ceremony right there in front of everyone. The pastor smiled gently and asked us to continue. We exchanged vows. Ethan promised to stand beside me no matter what happened. I promised to choose peace, respect, and honesty for the rest of my life. When we kissed, everyone stood up clapping loudly. My mother, my sister, and Brandon's family quietly left before the reception started. 3 chairs at the family table stayed empty all night, but honestly, for the first time in years I felt free. The reception was beautiful. We danced. We laughed. Ethan's mother hugged me and whispered, "You are safe now." That sentence almost made me cry. After the wedding, I cut contact with my mother and sister for several months. I blocked their numbers and focused on my marriage. My father later sent me a handwritten letter apologizing for staying silent all those years. I kept the letter because it felt genuine. My mother also wrote letters. She blamed fear, she blamed emotions, she blamed everyone except herself. But deep inside I knew one thing: fear is never an excuse for betrayal. Months later, my life became peaceful. Ethan and I renovated our home together. I received a promotion at work. We talked about starting a family someday. And slowly I understood something I never understood before. Some people only love you when they can control you, but real family respects your choices. They protect your heart instead of breaking it. This story reminds us that family is a trust, and relationships are built on respect, honesty, and responsibility, not control, pressure, or personal gain. Parents have a very high status and their rights must always be respected, served, and honored, even when they are imperfect or make mistakes. But at the same time, children also have their own rights, dignity, and freedom in life decisions. No parent is allowed to harm, pressure, or manipulate a child's future for money, status, or personal benefit, because true care is based on guidance and mercy, not control or force. In the same way, children should always maintain respect, patience, and kindness toward their parents, avoid harshness, and try to correct situations with wisdom instead of rebellion. The balance between both sides is what keeps family relationships strong and peaceful. In real life, the biggest question we must ask ourselves is this: when love becomes control and guidance turns into pressure, should we stay silent or stand for truth while still keeping respect? And the deeper reflection is whether we are fulfilling our responsibilities toward our parents and children with fairness, or allowing emotions and personal desires to damage relationships that should be built on trust and understanding.